Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Morning Glory video. In today's episode we shall be continuing our review of the Imperial Guard 10th edition index, this time casting our BDI over the Cadian shock troops. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for everyone's favourite purple-eyed yet cold-hearted killers. Cadia may have fallen, but its troops continue to fight in the name of the Emperor. So without further ado, let us fix our bayonets, hold the line, and dive right into today's episode. As is tradition, we shall start off today's video with a brief overview of what the hell the Cadian shock troops even are. Now, there is a veritable shed load of lore around the Cadian shock troops. They are one of the most fleshed out regiments in the Imperial Guard. I will do my best to cover the salient points, but I highly recommend that you read some of the Black Library novels, or at the very least, you waste half of your working day going through the wiki on these guys. The shock troopers hail from the world of Cadia, which was a planet that bordered on the Eye of Terror, the demon realm where many of the traitor legions fled after the Horus heresy. As a result, Cadia is a fortress world. Its recruitment rate and birth rate are synonymous. Every single person on that planet was part of the Imperial Guard, either a regiment serving off-world or part of the Cadia interior defense. Being on the front line and always being the first people responsible for throwing the traitor legions back into the warp from whence they came, the Cadian shock troopers had little choice but to become some of the best soldiers in the Imperium. Most Cadian children could field strip and reassemble a lasgun before their 5th birthday, and any child who could not carry out full military maneuvers by the age of 12 was considered to have been born on the wrong planet. But it wasn't just the people that embodied this martial tradition. Every single city was a bastion, every single building reinforced with rockcrete and firing positions, every single street designed to funnel enemies into killing zones. From the ground up, Cadia was a castle, and for 10,000 years, they held back the forces of chaos. But sadly, on the 13th Black Crusade, Cadia fell. Abaddon had enough of the planet defying him, thwarting his plans, and he took an ancient and irreplaceable and massive Blackstone fortress and crashed it into the planet's surface, obliterating it. Many presumed, both in universe and real life, that this would be the end of the Cadian shock troops, and another regiment, such as the Krieg, might have to step up and become the premier fighting force of the galaxy. But that has not happened. This is because Cadia is a very widespread people. They have colonies all over the Imperium. Their regiments have been part of the Imperial Tithe for thousands of years, and those regiments which have done very well have been given settlement rights. As a result, whilst Cadia has fallen, the spirit and people of Cadia live on, and if anything, they're stronger than ever, because now they have a burning desire to right the wrong, to take vengeance on Abaddon, and to undo the shame of losing their home planet. Now, whilst all of this is very exciting, what does it mean for the tabletop? Well, let's begin with a unit overview and we'll dive into that stat line. Cadian shock troopers have a pretty typical guardsman profile. They've got a movement of 6 inches, toughness 3, 5 up save, 1 wound, leadership 7, and a OC of 2. Now that is pretty much your bog standard human soldier profile, and we've seen that on the Catachans, the Krieg, and also the infantry squads. If you're a Cadian player, you might be a little bit disappointed by that. After all, didn't I just say that these are the creme de la creme, the best? Well, in the lore, yes, but this is one of those examples of where lore doesn't quite translate onto the tabletop. What we have to remember is at the end of the day, a human bloke with a rifle is a human bloke with a rifle. And whether he comes from Cadia, Mordia, Talan, or Krieg, they're all going to be pretty similar when you stack them up next to the likes of a Space Marine. Essentially, whilst in the lore, 1 Cadian is equal to 3 men from any other regiment, we just don't have that level of granularity in the tabletop game. But this does come with its own positives. I mean, at the end of the day, you aren't paying a crap load more points for your Cadian shock troopers. In fact, your Cadians, your Catachans, your infantry and your Krieg, they all come in at time of recording this video, 65 points for 10 blokes. So if the Cadians are the same points cost and they've got the same profile, what's the difference between them and the other battle line datasheets? Well, it comes down to equipment and abilities. In terms of your weapon options, you have quite a variety. You can take flamers and grenade launchers, melter guns and plasma guns. You also have easy access to voxcasters too. Your sergeant loadouts are a little limited. You've got the auto gun, or you've got bolt pistol or las pistol and chainsword. There isn't any option for your sergeant to take a power sword or a plasma pistol or a bolter, which does mean they aren't quite as tricked out as your death corps or infantry squad sergeants. And you also are missing out on a couple of special weapons as well. Specifically, you can't take sniper rifles in your Cadian shock troops, and snipers, whilst not a great weapon, are massively improved in comparison to previous editions. Also, when compared to your Death Corps Krieg, you can't take as many special weapons. You see, your Kriegers can choose to put aside their voxcasters and instead take a plasma gun. This means when you stack a 10-man Cadian squad next to a 10-man Krieger squad, the Krieger squad is going to have more firepower. They are going to outshoot the Cadians because the Kriegers are going to have a plasma pistol and a power sword on their sergeant, then another plasma gun, then a melter gun, and then probably a grenade launcher as well, leading to 5 bits of offensive special equipment for the gas mask boys. But your Cadians get 2. You get those special weapons. Bear in mind, you can't duplicate them. You can only take 1 of each unless you take a 20-man squad, then you can take 2 of each. And I'm not going to count the bolt pistol or the auto gun as special equipment because it's still very much light firepower, and you can't take power swords. So if Kriegers and Cadians were to get in a direct firefight, I can't help but think that the Kriegers are going to come out on top. But Mordian Glory, I hear you say, you always tell us that infantry firepower is incidental, it's supplemental. So it doesn't really matter if the Death Corps do more damage. As long as the Cadians can still take ground and hold ground and just be effective speed bumps and just do that infantry game, they should be good, right? Yeah, absolutely. And on paper, they can die just as easily as everyone else out there. But then you take into account the bigger picture. And you realise that whilst the Cadian shock troopers can have a command squad attached to them, which gives them a fairly decent 6-up feel no pain, the Kriegers get access to Death Corps marshals, and that gives them access to a 5-up feel no pain, which completely knocks the command squad into a cocked hat. 5-up feel no pain is one of the most powerful abilities that you can get right now. A lot of people are sleeping on it because feel no pains were slowly phased out of the game over 8th and 9th edition. There was a reason GW did that. Feel no pain is a really good ability. It totally dominated in things like 6th and 7th edition. The fact it's back now in 10th is wild. And the fact that you can get it on your standard infantry Kriegers is just brilliant. And unfortunately, it kind of means it's another tally in the favour of the Death Corps. And it's another issue that the Cadian shock troops kind of got to deal with. But hey, maybe it's a bit unfair to keep comparing the Cadians to the Death Corps. I mean, they are the best datasheet for the Guard infantry right now, and if we stacked up Catachans or regular infantry against them, they'd also fall short. Why don't we instead turn our attention to comparing Cadians to things like the Catachans? Surely they can beat the army of Rambo, right? Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple. Because yes, your Cadian shock troopers do get access to more special weapons. But if you're taking Catachans in your list, it's got nothing to do with the firepower. Either you're doing it because you're a diehard Catachan player, at which point I want to say respect, definitely respect that, or you're taking Catachans in your list because you need an infantry choice that can get up the board quickly and use its scout move to screen out enemy deep strikers and reserve, or you're taking them because you need close combat. At that point, once again, the Cadians are being outclassed because they don't have a scout move. So they have no real way, outside of just moving around regularly and hoping you get turn 1, of pushing back enemy turn 1 Alpha Strike shenanigans. People that can teleport across the board, like Grey Knights and whatnot. And they don't have any close combat capability whatsoever. Strachan in a Catjam blob with a priest is a genuine combat threat. Cadian shock troopers don't have anything like that. You put Creed in there, bunch of Cadians don't suddenly become amazing at close combat. Creed's got a power sword, that's it. Okay. Things are starting to get a little bit desperate now, because they don't outline infantry the Kriegers and they don't out shenanigan infantry the Catachans. They must be able to beat the basic infantry squad. I mean, that datasheet literally represents conscripts from an agri world that have had a lasgun shoved in their hand. So the Cadian shock troops got to be better than them, right? Well, yes, but also no. Because whilst on paper it's true, the Cadians get more special weapons than the regular infantry. Unfortunately, you can't really use that as a point in their favour. Because on the one hand, Kriegers get more special weapons than both. So if you're looking for an infantry choice that has a lot of special weapons in it and is going to do close range damage, there's no point in stopping halfway at the Cadians. You might as well go all the way to the Kriegers, right? And then another reason why it's a bit of a problem is because the infantry squads get heavy weapons. And those heavy weapons are going to be firing from turn 1 because they've got the longer range. Typically, those heavy weapons, especially things like las cannons and autocannons, have got a higher rate of fire or are significantly more punchy than the man-portable special weapons of the Cadians. To put it bluntly, the Cadians just can't deal with heavy monsters and vehicles. If a big old battle tank turns up, that pair of melter guns and plasma guns in a 20-man Cadian blob isn't going to be able to deal with it on its own, because you're going to be wounding on 5s. Whereas the infantry squad's packing a pair of las cannons, and they're probably going to wound it on 3s. And they've got the range and AP to get the job done from a much safer distance as well. Now, all of this is looking pretty bleak, the old Cadians, but they do have one last trick up their sleeve, which is their special ability, Shock Troops. At the end of your command phase, if this unit is within range of an objective marker you control, that objective marker remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it, until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. In layman's terms, what this means is the objective becomes sticky. Even if your Cadians move off that objective or are killed, it's still yours until your opponent physically moves onto the objective with one of his own units. On paper, this is quite a nifty ability, because it means that your Cadian shock troops could move onto an objective and then they can move off it, keep the momentum of the offensive going, and you're still going to hold that objective, which is quite nice. The problem is that in reality, this doesn't quite work. Firstly, most guard armies don't have an issue with presence and combat width. What you tend to find is you've got 3 or 4 waves of units making up your offensive, and once you've taken ground, it tends to stay yours unless it's being heavily contested in the middle of the board. Let me explain what I mean by this. Let's say you're playing a mission where there's an objective in no man's land, but it's pretty near your deployment zone. What's going to happen is your Cadian shock troops will move up and they will take the objective, and the next turn they'll move off. But the wave behind, maybe it's another unit of infantry, maybe it's a tank, is going to move up to take their position. So the sticky objective doesn't matter because you've put another unit on it anyway. So in that situation, shock troops isn't really helping you. Then when I talk about the middle of the board, what tends to happen is you move a unit onto the middle, somewhere really contested. What's going to happen is your opponent is going to countercharge you, because most enemy armies, even if they're not designed for combat, are still better than guard in combat. Those Marines will have no issue on giving you a volley of bolt of fire and then wading in with fists and combat knives to beat the shit out of what remains. And in that situation, again, shock troops doesn't help you because you've not only lost the objective, but your opponent has gone onto the objective. Sure, it would be remiss of me not to mention that there are armies out there like Tau who are going to almost solely rely upon blowing you off objectives with firepower, meaning it would stay under your control. In that specific scenario, shock troops is good. But now we're trying to take a unit based upon a very specific set of circumstances, and that doesn't make a good squad. A good squad is something that is useful no matter the battle. It's something that is take all comers. And let's not forget the biggest Achilles of shock troops, which is that some missions come with sticky objectives as standard. That's right. There are missions out there where if any unit in your army takes an objective, that objective remains yours until your opponent physically comes over to it. In those scenarios, shock troops is literally useless. Okay, so there's a lot of information that I'm throwing at you guys right now, and it might feel a bit overwhelming. So let me just boil it down to one simple thing. My final thought on the matter, which is I believe that Cadians right now are the weakest troop choice. They're not a bad unit. They're still 10 blokes for 65 points. You can still take them in 20-man squads. They're still meat for the grinder. But the problem is that there's always going to be another battle line choice that can do the job that you're taking them for better. Your Krieg will always be better line infantry. Your infantry squads will always be better at holding objectives. And your Cadians will always be better at doing shenanigans. Right now, the Cadians lack identity. They lack personality. They lack something which makes them stand out and feel unique and interesting, and they're just not bringing anything special to the tabletop. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you believe that the Cadians have been done dirty, or is there something that I've overlooked and actually they're pretty good troops? Of course, as always, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. And if you found today's video particularly fun or informative, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be helping me create more content, but you will also unlock a whole host of perks for yourself, including access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,000 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for discussing tactics, army lists, hobbying, painting, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. And I just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to all of the latest channel members. So thank you to Soup, Kilo Sierra, Sam Tullock, Joey C, Gold Bear, Finbar Orton, Snooker Fly, Philip K, Joshua Z, Holodimer, Henry Morgan, Tom G, Gilbert the King 97, Joshua Crosby, Brian Davies, Shock Me, Lex Berrien, Troop Topless, Peter S, Zombies, Peter B, Warren Shields, Colin C, Martin K, Relic YT, James Burnell, Preacher, Michael Gray, Beetlejuice, HTLL Voidwalker, and CJSJDJFDJEJXI. Possibly the hardest username I've ever had to read out on one of these thank yous. We've also got Paulio Ruiz, Grotz Gubbins, and Dark Like Vader. Thank you guys for becoming channel members. Thank you for doing your part. I also want to say a big thank you and a shout out to the latest Patreons as well. So thank you to Tone B, Buford, Mr. Ando, Reaper, Ethan M, Robert, Will Anonison, Merrick, Jonas Caring, Ravenham, Rogue Flight, Jordan Freeman 94, and Amy DeSweet. And last, but certainly not least, I want to say a personal, special, heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. So a massive thank you to Alan Blunt III, Amy DeSweet, Bon Vert, Ken Starr, Mark Panconi, Ross Miller, Salvish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously, guys, thank you so much for your incredible and humbling support. It truly makes a huge difference and is a big part of how I'm able to do Mordy and Glory full time. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.